Americans abroad don't struggle because of language. They don't struggle because of culture. They don't struggle because the locals are closed off or don't want them. Americans struggle to integrate abroad because they were never socially trained to integrate at home. It's not an international problem, it's a domestic one, just exported. When I moved to the Dominican Republic, I thought integration was a matter of effort. Learn Spanish, respect the culture, be social, adapt. I thought it was a checklist, but what I found wasn't a checklist problem, it was a conditioning problem. Americans abroad are trying to build something they've never seen fully working in their own country. That's an organic, non transactional community, not a network, not a friend group formed from coworkers, not a social circle built from convenience. A real community formed from proximity and social fluency. And here's the uncomfortable truth: most Americans have never experienced that inside the US. So, how can they recreate what they've never learned? I landed in Santo Domingo with the same mindset that most Americans have when they move abroad. I'll find my place, I'll make friends naturally, and people will see I'm respectful. But the first shock wasn't about my safety, it wasn't about my language, and it wasn't about cost of living. It was the social infrastructure. In the US, community sounds like this: memberships, groups, schedules, commitments, and permission. In the Dominican Republic and other Latin American countries, community is the neighbor calling you by name before you introduce yourself, the colmado knowing what you buy before you ask, being included before being evaluated, identity before credentials, proximity before status. It's a completely different operating system. There was a moment when it clicked for me. I was sitting outside at a colmado, watching people move, talking, laughing, shouting across the street, kids running, old men arguing about basketball or politics, someone's aunt handing out plates like it was a holiday, and no one asking who's invited or who paid. There was no event, there was no plan, there was just community happening. And I realized Americans don't know how to function in a space where community is not scheduled but lived. So before we go deeper, here's the line everything hangs on. Americans abroad don't fail at integration because they don't want community. They fail because they don't know what community actually is. They know structure, they know opportunity, they know ambition, they know individual identity, but community, organic, unmediated, unmonetized community, that's foreign. Before I break down the identities, I need to prepare you for what's coming. What I'm about to describe isn't about good or bad people. It's not about intelligence or morality. It's about conditioning, the kind you don't realize you have until it breaks. So, to understand the American experience abroad, I need to separate it, not by age, race, wealth, or politics, but by how Americans believe community should form. There are three groups. The first group are the observers. This American watches life happen from the edges. They want to participate, but they hesitate. They say things to themselves like, I don't want to intrude, I don't want to bother anybody, I'm waiting for an invitation. They don't realize the invitation already happened, and it happened the moment that they showed up. Then we have the replicators. These Americans try to rebuild America abroad. American style brunch spots, expat WhatsApp groups, English only bubbles, imported routines. They say, if I can bring familiarity here, then I won't have to stretch. They're not integrating, they're recreating. And then we have the ones who resist. These Americans reject the host culture to protect their identity. They say things like, this is why I left, this system doesn't make sense. They say things like, why isn't it done the right way? So they close themselves off, not because they're bad, but because they feel threatened by difference. Here's the fracture. Americans believe integration is about acceptance from others, but integration abroad is about the collapse of the familiar self. It's not, do they let me in? It's, can I let go enough to step in? In the Dominican Republic, I saw things that would confuse most Americans. Lending money without paperwork, neighbors disciplining each other's kids, doors open, not locked, in some places, conversations that start without context, plans that appear out of thin air, holidays that are created, not scheduled. In the US, people see this as irresponsible, boundaryless, and unstructured, but locals see it as trust, interdependence, human infrastructure. Community is a survival mechanism, not a lifestyle accessory. From the outside, it becomes clear. Americans learned how to protect themselves. Latin America learned how to protect each other, which means Americans arrive strong and leave isolated. Latin Americans arrive ordinary and leave supported. Not because one is better, but because one is trained. Community is not a philosophy. It is not a value. It is not a belief system. Community is a skill. And America never built the environment to teach that skill. Isolation normalized, privacy weaponized, independence glorified, boundaries industrialized, connection monetized. So Americans go abroad looking for belonging, not realizing that they were never given the tools to create it. There's no advice here, no 5 steps, no integration hacks, no do this and it will fix it. Because the real conflict isn't abroad, it's internal. And until that's addressed, every country will feel the same: beautiful, inspiring, confusing, and impossible to enter. Americans abroad don't fail to build community. They just don't know what it looks like until they leave home. And when they see it, it breaks them because you can't export what you never built.